Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So this whole thing has spun out of control. The George Santos scandal has gotten worse, if you can believe it. The so-called Jewish congressman-elect George Santos is now under investigation by multiple authorities. More of his lies have surfaced, including one about the death of his mother, if you can believe it. And the source of some of his funding has been revealed. And it's as shady as we suspected. Potentially, I should say. Here's the deal. The Nassau County District Attorney, who's a Republican, by the way, said that she's going to be investigating Santos. And if he committed a crime in the county, quote, we will prosecute it. New York Attorney General Letitia James also is now investigating Santos. And prosecutors for the Eastern District of New York said that they're reviewing his financial disclosure forms. So I'll keep you guys posted on all of that. But in the meantime, more of his lies have been unearthed. First, one of the most bizarre so far. He said his mother died in the 9/11 attack, or at least that's what he intimated. That's what he indicated. If you're watching this video, what you see on the screen is a tweet that he posted on Twitter in July of 2021. For those listening to the podcast, it reads in part, quote, 9/11 claimed my mother's life. So sounds like she died in that attack, right? Which would be horrific, which would be a tragedy. Now what you're seeing is a tweet that Santos wrote on December 23rd of the same year, 2021. For those listening, this one says, quote, December 23rd this year marks 5 years I lost my best friend and mentor. Mom, you will live forever in my heart. So that would mean, that second tweet would mean she passed away in 2016, not in 2001. And Santos on his campaign website tells a different story, a different version of events, which kind of marries these two narratives, but it doesn't still make sense. It says, quote, George's mother was in her office in the South Tower on September 11, 2001, when the horrific events of that day unfolded. She survived the tragic events on September 11th, but she passed away a few years later when she lost her battle to cancer. So 9/11 claimed his mother's life 15 years later, and he calls that a few years. So I don't know. Next up is the more lies that we found out. More lies about his education. Santos reportedly stated on numerous occasions that he attended this prestigious college prep school in the Bronx. He made this claim, by the way, both in writing and also in person in various media interviews. And as Santos tells the story, he wasn't able to complete his education at this prep school because of the 2008 financial crash and recession. According to Santos, he had to drop out of this elite private school just 4 months shy of graduation because his family at the time was over leveraged in the real estate market. As with other stories, though, this appears to be completely fake. A spokesman for the Horace Mann Prep School in the Bronx, which is where he says he attended, they told CNN, quote, we've searched the records and there is no evidence that George Santos or any alias attended Horace Mann. Next is another apparent lie about his work at Goldman Sachs. On a podcast just months before he won his election, Santos claims that he was at an event and that he went off on his employer at this public event. He said, quote, have you ever heard of a Goldman Sachs employee take the stage at the largest private equity conference in the world, SALT, run by Anthony Scaramucci, and berate their employer? Well, I did that. And I did it in the fashion of renewable energy and global warming. This was the panel I was on, and they're all talking about solar, wind. And this was back, 7 years ago now? And I said, you know what? That is a scam. It's taxpayer money that gets subsidized. So not only is he a climate denier, But Goldman Sachs says this is completely false. Also, Anthony Scaramucci confirmed that no, Santos never spoke at this event. He was never on a panel at this event. And in fact, there's no record of him even attending this conference as a guest. As for his claim that he never said or meant that he was Jewish, yeah, well, that's another lie. Because Santos, we now know, has made numerous comments calling himself a, quote, proud American Jew. And in a Fox News interview in February of 2022, he told the interviewer, quote, we don't carry the Ukrainian last name. For a lot of people who are descendants of World War II refugees or survivors of the Holocaust, a lot of names and paperwork were changed in the name of survival. So I don't carry the family last name that I would have been Zabrowski. I carry my mother's maiden name, which is the Dutch side of the family. CNN found that at one point, also, Santos set up a GoFundMe page for an animal charity, and he used the alias of Anthony Zabrowski. Yet, a professional genealogist dug into his family history, and she said, quote, there's no sign of Jewish and or Ukrainian heritage and no indication of name changes along the way. Santos also claimed during a December 2020 interview, quote, my father fled socialism in Brazil. My mother fled socialism in Europe, and they came here and built a family. Then in another 2020 interview, he reiterated that he, quote, grew up with a white Caucasian mother, an immigrant from Belgium. But records show Santos' mom was born in Brazil. And as I mentioned, we're finding out more about where some of his cash originated. So Santos apparently received nearly $2,700 from one close associate of Russian oligarch Viktor Vekselberg. In addition to that, Vekselberg's cousin, who also manages his money, is a man named Andrew Intrater. Intrater started throwing money at Santos for this last election for some reason. In total, the Daily Beast reports that Intrater and his wife donated $80,000 to Santos-related political action committees. And what do you know? Following Russia's attack on Ukraine, Santos told the Washington Post, quote, it's not like Ukraine is a great democracy. It's a totalitarian regime. They're not a great bastion of freedom. And then he also falsely claimed that in 2014, the Ukrainian people, quote, welcome the Russians into their provinces. And Santos bragged in interviews that he's traveled to Moscow many times over the course of his career. Now, could that be another lie to add to his growing list? Absolutely. But the question is, why were people with ties to one of the wealthiest Russian oligarchs donating tens of thousands of dollars to American political organizations tied to Santos? Seems a little odd, right? And this isn't the only shady source of funds. Journalists have started to follow the money, and Santos has confirmed the names of 4 supposed clients of his Devolder organization. The Daily Beast identified, quote, the New York-based Tantillo Auto Group, 2 organizations tied to the influential Ruiz family in South Florida, and another firm associated with Long Island insurance magnate James C. Metzger. However, none of these so-called clients were listed on Santos campaign finance disclosure forms, which, as I mentioned the other day, is required. The Daily Beast also noted all of these people and or their family members donated to Santos' campaign. And they said 3 Tantillo family members donated $44,800 to his campaign. 3 Ruiz family members donated $17,300. And Metzger gave him $23,700. Now, here's the thing. Here's where things start to look a little suspicious. In January of 2022, members of this Ruiz family created 2 limited liability corporations, and they claimed that they hired Santos' company in early 2022. So you create two LLCs, you create them within a week of each other, and then all of a sudden, those LLCs are doing business with Santos and hiring a company that he has that has no track record, supposedly giving him millions of dollars to do what? And they didn't elaborate. They didn't say what they hired him for, what this was all about. And when the Daily Beast tried to follow up with them with questions, they just didn't reply. And all of these people and these families also donated large sums of money to Republican Lee Zeldin. He's the Republican who ran and lost. He was trying to become the governor of New York. And here's the thing. We all know, I mean, wealthy donors aren't anything new in American politics, right? They're everywhere. It's part of the problem we have. However, if Santos set up his Devolder Corporation specifically for the purpose of funneling wealthy donor money to his campaign in amounts that exceed the maximum allowable campaign contribution, that's a crime. So Santos better have literal receipts and bank records to back up this so-called $700,000 loan he gave to his campaign, because there are two ways that this money could land him in legal jeopardy and potentially in prison. The first is obvious. If these people did funnel money into his campaign, into his corporation, and they did so to try to skirt campaign finance laws, right? To give him more than what's allowed. And they funneled it through the company. He pretended he was loaning himself the money. The second is, let's say that Santos company did legitimately do work for these people. He did legitimately earn that money, and the corporation took that money in and then lent the money to his campaign, as he says. That's still illegal. According to campaign finance experts, that is still illegal because the money can come from a candidate's personal account, but a corporation is a separate entity, and a corporation is not legally allowed to lend money to a political campaign. I have a feeling this Santos guy is like a very rotten onion. The more we peel, the more it's going to stink, the slimier it's going to get. Because remember, this guy claims that he went from making $55,000 in 1 year, struggling seemingly every year before that, to making somewhere between $3.5 and $11.5 million in the very next year. People were just handing him millions of dollars in a business that he had never done before, supposedly. This is what he's saying. Oh, they gave me millions of dollars because they wanted to sell large assets, things like airplanes and yachts. And so I would hook them up and put them together with people who wanted to buy them. And then I would take a commission off of it. Really? This guy kind of came out of nowhere. This guy was making a very average income, especially for New York, had never done that kind of work before. And these people are just throwing hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars at him. And yet his company had no website. It holds no assets, and no one's actually been able to verify and ascertain that that's what his company does, because he's given several different explanations about what his company is, what it actually does. He's never been able to really keep his story straight. And according to his 2022 financial disclosure form, he has between $100,000 and $250,000 in a checking account. And he has somewhere between 1 to 5 million in a savings account. Yet neither one of those accounts existed or were listed on his 2020 financial disclosure form. So again, he just came into all this money within 1 to 2 years with no experience. Yeah. And then to top it all off, Santos' so-called company, which, like I said, it's called Devolder, he created it. You guys might remember I said this the other day. He created it in May of 2021. It was shut down by the time he won the 2022 midterm election. And he gave some excuse, oh, my accountant didn't refile the paperwork in time, something like that. So this was supposedly September of 2022 that his accountant didn't file the paperwork. He didn't do anything about it. The election came and went. It wasn't until December, the day after the New York Times exposed all of his initial lies, what we first knew about. That's when he went the day after and filed the document to reinstate DeValder Corporation in Florida. That's not suspicious at all, right? Yeah, just kind of refreshed his memory that, oh my gosh, I better kind of keep that whole thing going, keep that whole facade of where I got this money going. Maybe. I don't know. We don't have proof yet, but that seems probably the most plausible explanation. And here's the other thing. The address that's used on the corporate document is that of a property owned by a man named Jason Benoit. And Benoit, it just so happens, is tied to both Donald Trump and Mike Flynn. All in Florida, all the same people. Why do shady politics always somehow always lead back to Florida? That's called a clue, people. Anyway, thanks so much for watching and listening, guys. When I hear more, because you know I will let you know. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please donate. Please become a monthly supporter through Supercast if you possibly can, or Coffee or Patreon. Doesn't matter, wherever you want to set that up. But I so appreciate it. Thank you all again. Take care. Happy holidays again. Happy New Year to all of you. Love you all. I'll talk with you soon.